guest in the studio is Senator James Paterson, one of our regulars. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Tom.
Got some breaking news. MEDEVAC can be repealed with one condition. We don't know what it is yet. Do you know?
No, I'm just as curious as you are, Tom, about what Senator Lambie's condition is. It sounds like she has communicated it to government and to the relevant ministers, so that matter might be above my pay grade, and I'll let those that have responsibility for the area engage with Senator Lambie on that.
I guess that's the question, and you'll find out what it is as to whether you can sort of compromise in that area. The government's pretty keen to get this done, so it'd have to be a pretty unreasonable one for you not to say yes?
I mean, my inclination, Tom, is that if it was a reasonable suggestion which didn't undermine the strong and successful border protection policies that the government has implemented, then we'd be willing to entertain it. But if it did in any way undermine our border protection regime, the government can't and won't entertain it.
All right, we'll get you to find out and just text it to us later.
Sure, no worries.
Now, it spilled over into the other place today, into the Senate, the pursuit of Angus Taylor. It's not every day you have a strike force formed for a federal minister, is it?
I think people are getting a little bit excited about the name that's been used and the excitement of that. Essentially what's happened here, Tom, is that Mark Travis has done what he always does, which is he's written a letter to a law enforcement agency about his political opponents and asked them to investigate them. It's not improper for a police force receiving a letter like that from the Shadow Attorney General to agree to look into the matter, but it does not mean that they've put any stock or weight in the claims that Mark Travis has made. In fact, Mark Travis's track record in this area is that all of these sorts of inquiries and referrals he's made have amounted to nothing, absolutely nothing at all.
It also doesn't mean they're dismissing it at this stage, but we'll see what happens with the police investigation, that's fine. Where does responsibility lie? If there's a document forged in Angus Taylor's office and he's put his name on it, does that mean he has to take responsibility?
Well, we don't know that that has happened, Tom.
No, but that's what I'm trying to establish, that if we look at the Westminster system, would that be fair enough? If he's put his name to something that's forged, does he need to be held responsible? It's
fair of you to ask and to try, Tom, but there's no way I'm going to answer hypothetical questions like that. I don't know where that would lead us if I started saying, under this hypothetical scenario, this should happen, and under that hypothetical scenario, this should happen. So there's no way I can respond to hypotheticals like that, Tom.
So it might be the case of if someone has gone rogue within the office, it's entirely on their head, not Angus Taylor?
That might be the case, or something entirely different might be the case. I just don't know. I'm not privy to that information, so there's not much else I can really assist you with, I'm afraid.
There's a tradition there that there's a certain responsibility, though, for the minister in their office, right? And if something comes across your desk and you're asked to sign it, you'd ascertain the validity of it?
I do my best in the busy life that we lead as parliamentarians and the huge amount of correspondence and paperwork that we deal with. That's me as a humble backbencher. Ministers literally deal with reams and reams of it every day. I think
so they're too busy to check.
No, I think what we can and should expect from ministers is their best endeavours.
But you wouldn't sign something if you thought there was, any chance it was inaccurate.
I do my best whenever I make a public statement to check that it's based on evidence.
Does that sometimes involve you go, OK, that's interesting, and you might make a phone call or look it up on the internet?
Tom, I'm flattered that you're interested in my internal processes and procedures before making a public statement, but I don't think this really assists us in the Taylor matter. Police will have something to say about that at some point.
So on the one hand, at the moment, what we do know is Sydney City Council has released the metadata, saying if you look at the time in question, August, the website had the accurate information. That hasn't changed. On the other side, we haven't seen that information released by the office or by Angus Taylor.
I'm not an IT expert, Tom, so I don't know what metadata Angus Taylor's office would even have to release.
But that's where we're at the moment.
If there is any, I don't know.
But that's where we're at the moment, isn't it? We haven't had any of that. One side's released metadata, one hasn't. You'd understand why Labor asks questions for that reason.
Well, Angus Taylor's made a statement in the House which has been very clear. He's been supported from the Prime Minister down on that statement. I think the burden is on those who are alleging something else to happen here to prove that. It is not the way of our legal system in this country that people have to go to prove their innocence. You have to prove their guilt. If you're the one making the accusation, the burden is on you, and I don't think that burden has been met.
So that's obviously the case in a criminal case. Is there an element, though, of if a minister is trying to clear their name, If they have evidence, present it. If they have metadata, present it.
I think that's a good principle, not just in our legal system, but just generally, Tom. If you're making accusations towards someone, then it's up for you to substantiate them. Otherwise, we'd have a system where you could just make any slur, any outlandish slur, and if the person who was on the receiving end of that slur wasn't able to comprehensively refute it, then something would hang over their heads, and that would be really unjust.
But we do have, as I said, so they say the information on a website didn't say these figures. Your figures have been made up in some way. They have presented evidence and there's not evidence on the other side.
No, all we have, Tom, is an admission from the Minister that there was an inaccurate number used in a letter, which he has apologised for. That's all we have.
All right.